Terry Williams started out as a social worker and later became public relations agent to some of Hollywood's top celebrities, including Eddie Murphy and Miles Davis. A few years after launching her public relations business, Terry's energy and drive began to fade. She was suffering from a mild but chronic form of depression called dysthymia.
Here you are landing another major name, and you really just don't feel it anymore. And it was the having to pretend that I was excited about signing them, and I really wasn't, because I was really, I was dying inside.
Dysthymia affects millions of Americans and often goes unrecognized, as was the case for Terry.
Oftentimes when we talk about depression, we're talking about very severe depression. I've had patients say to me, I'm so depressed I can't answer the phone because the phone seems like it weighs 100 pounds. On the other end of the extreme, but still pathological, is a low-grade, smoldering, bad depression. It's not as so severe that you can't work or go to school, but it's there.
An estimated 10 to 15 million Americans live with dysthymia, a condition that is characterized by symptoms that persist for 2 years or more. Terry's symptoms included fatigue, trouble concentrating, and compulsive overeating.
So I would come home, eat junk food, all times of the night. At some point, the food wasn't enough, and I would just weep, and it was frightening to me, because during those moments, I just felt that this was the end of the world, and I was having what I understood to be a nervous breakdown.
Terry sought professional help, which included medication and talk therapy.
There's power in naming it. You know, I remember when my psychiatrist said to me, "You are clinically depressed," I almost felt like something inside of me jumped up. It's like, oh, thank you. You put a name to this, and it's something that's treatable.
For 30 years, Terry lived with the symptoms of depression, but never fully realized the seriousness of her illness. Terry believes stigma, which she sees as pervasive in the African-American community, played a role in the denial of her condition.
Many of us would rather tell somebody that we have a relative in jail or on drugs before we will ever utter mental illness.
Terry believes that persistent racism contributes to feelings of hopelessness among African Americans.
You get used to feeling bad, that you think that that's how you are supposed to feel, that you are supposed to carry the world on your shoulders and not complain. That's how so many Black men and women have come to feel.
Philip Bugere can relate to Terry's experience. He too soldiered through low-grade depression and fell prey to its stigma, which he believes is acute among corporate executives.
I am in the 6th month of my tenure as CEO of a Fortune 100 company. My mind seems to have taken on a life of its own, distant from my physical body, but the effects on my body are evident. I have sleepless nights, and the smallest of things agitate me. I want out, but I am stuck because I have never quit anything in my life. I functioned with low-level depression for a couple of years and functioned pretty well. You know, there's a term called fake it till you make it. You know, I kind of faked it for a long period of time.
Once the youngest CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Philip twice took million-dollar companies and turned them into multi-billion-dollar enterprises.
When I ran Cameron Ironworks, I had a mistress. And I would actually sneak out on Sunday mornings and tell my wife I got to run to the grocery store, and I'd go to work for 2 hours. And so my mistress that I would sneak out to was my work.
For 16 long years, Philip buried himself in his work, ignoring his symptoms, until he collapsed in his office from a severe panic attack.
Literally almost overnight, it was, I can't handle it anymore. It was a grade A, level 10 depression. I mean, like an atomic bomb went off. And that's when I, you know, guess had the sense to check myself into a mental institution because I could no longer handle it.
The Wall Street Journal and Houston Chronicle cited stress-related reasons for his abrupt departure. The public humiliation he felt and his company's plummeting stock only added to his distress.
I was 100% convinced that my wife and my 2 children would be better off without me.
Safe in a hospital, he met another patient who encouraged him to speak out.
She looked me right in the eyes and she said, "Philip, I'm not going to make it." She said, "But you are." And she said, "I want you to promise me something. When you make it, I want you to promise me that you'll tell your story because you can help other people."
Philip took his story public in Houston before a group of business leaders. This action inspired executives the world over to seek his advice about their own battles with depression.
In fact, I tried 5 different medications, and just you could almost go down the list, and every one of them caused my anxiety level to go through the roof. So
my experience in the people that I work with, executive level, etc., it's about 50%. Will sometime during their career suffer from a serious clinical depression.
The consequences of untreated depression can be severe. Every year, there are approximately 650,000 reported suicide attempts in America, as Philip knows only too well.
I got a call from a gentleman here in Houston, worked for one of the biggest companies in the world. He had loaded a gun and put it to his head and cocked it, and he called me the next day. And of course, I did everything I could to get him in a hospital that afternoon, which I did.
In an odd twist of fate, Philip would discover that the act of encouraging others to seek treatment would later help him in his own recovery.